There's a really loud droning noise and I'm like 90% sure it's from the AC, but I'm also not gonna be that person and go turn off the AC for the entire house. So we're just gonna have to deal with it. Hi people, and welcome to my wrap up of the first half of the year's books. I was gonna do them every month like I've been doing, but then I got depressed and I skipped a couple months, and then I got to the point where I was like, you know what, I might as well just do 2 of them this year, 1 in the middle of the year, and maybe I'll start doing them monthly after this one. But anyway, 6 months of wrap up, and we have a very nice even number of books that I've read so far this year, which is 90 books, which I say that's pretty good. So anyway, I'm gonna tell you about the books. I'm not gonna go into huge insane detail because I don't want this video to be 4 hours long, because I just finished editing a 2-hour long video and I don't want to do that ever again. So we're gonna be nice and concise. I'm gonna just like talk about the books that I really liked or I really hated quite a lot, and then the books that were just kind of eh. Honestly, at this point I probably don't remember them very much, so it's gonna work out very good to just not talk about them very much. Also, as I go through, I'm going to show you the drawings that I did in my reading journal just for fun. So this one is January. I was kind of going for there's glitter on the floor after the party. You know, it's fine. I don't love any of the ones I've done this year except for the one for June, which is very funny. So in January, I ended up reading 12 books for a total of 12 books so far the year. The first book that I read was The Druid by Jeff Wheeler, and I rated this one 4 stars. This is the first book in a series, and I think I read all of them this month. Yeah, I read all of them this month, which I guess I'll tell you about them all right now. So there's 3 books in the series. The first one is The Druid, the second one is The Hunted, and the third one is The Betrayed. I rated the first one 4 stars, the second one 4.25 stars, and the third one 4.5 stars. I think this series is the most useless almost of all of the prequel series that he's written for Muirwood. I did like it because it's Muirwood and I love Muirwood, but it did to me kind of feel like he had this idea and he wanted to write it, and so it drags me in less than some of his other series, because I've read so many books so far this year, and these are my least favorite books of his, besides like some of the novellas that I've read so far, that I just was like, eh, it was fine. Like, I liked it, but I wasn't obsessed. But I do recommend this series. I wouldn't read this one first, even though technically it is the first series set in Muirwood, which, if you don't know, he has several series set in the same world, and actually almost all the books he's ever written are interconnected, besides I think the Dresden Codex, but all of them are interconnected somehow. So this is the first series, and then I think there's 4 series underneath it, and all of them are interconnected, but you can enjoy them on their own, except for this one. I say this one is the one that you kind of do need to understand the other series, because it kind of answers some questions that happen in those other series. But I did like it quite a lot. It does connect a lot to the King Fountain series also, so honestly, it works better if you've read King Fountain before you read this series. So I don't know. Anyway, I own the book, and I'm happy I own the book because it's cute to own his books. His books are so hard to get your hands on because they're like never at any libraries that I've been to. Like, they have quite a lot of his books in my local library, but he's written like 40 something books, and so they don't have 40 of his books at the library, and so I've been slowly getting through them with Kindle Unlimited, which they're on there. But eventually, someday, I want to have enough money that I can buy all of his books and have a beautiful shelf, just like my Sarah and Meaden shelf. The next book that I read this year was Room to Breathe by Casey West. This one I think came out, did it come out right then and then I read it? Yeah, I read it when it came out. Normally I save for books to read during February because they're romances and that's fun, but I wanted to read this one immediately. I did like this one. It's not my favorite of the books that I've ever read from her. I haven't been loving her more recent, my siblings are yelling, lovely. I ended up rating it 4.25 stars. I haven't been loving her more recent books as much as I've been loving her older books that I read, but I think that might have partially to do with the fact that I am no longer a teenager, and so I still love them, I still connect to them, but my problems are slightly bigger than teenage problems, and so I don't connect on that soul level anymore. But I'm still gonna read these books because I really, really like her young adult books. I have read a couple of her adult books, which I think I'll get into that later. I think I read them this year, so I'll give you my reviews on her adult books later. But I did really like this one. I'm really excited for the one that comes out later this year because it's a specific full, what is it called? Holiday romance. So it comes out in October and it's a Christmas romance, and I pre-ordered it and I'm so excited. It's so wonderful. I also got to meet Casey West this year and I got one of her books signed. She was just lovely and I love her so much. If you're watching this video, please release Lonely Hearts Day in physical form and I'll buy it. Thank you very much. And also, if you want to write anything else, I'll read it. Am I gonna give you any synopsis about this? Am I gonna give you synopsis about any of these books? No. I'm not gonna give you synopsises on books that I don't care as much about the synopsis. With romances, I don't feel like it helps to give a synopsis of a romance, because for me at least, I understand them so quickly. When you tell me the synopsis, I'm like, well, duh, no, now I know what happens. So I don't like to read reviews or synopsises of a book before I read it. I just like to go in blind. So anyway, I'm gonna not give synopsises also for the sake of time. The reason why I didn't like this one quite as much as some of our other ones was I didn't like the way that it was set up as much. I liked the characters. I liked the fact that this is a very edgy character, like she's going through some stuff. I liked her plot. I liked like the stuff that's going through, but the fact that kind of the romance happens through flashbacks kind of drew me out of the story a little bit. I was also reading this within like, I don't know, so quickly. I binged it, so I could also just reread it and enjoy it more, which I have done with some of her books. I've reread them and like connected with them on a soul level. So I honestly, I think that might happen because I did cry at the end of this book because it really connected with me at one part. So I'll probably like this better on a reread, honestly. Next I read Spellbreaker and Spellmaker by Charlie N. Holmberg. This is a duology, and I rated them both 4.5 stars because as a duology they kind of became one book to me because I also read them back to back. So the first book, the mystery was so interesting and the love story was really interesting. I think one of the things that I felt that she was falling into was the whole trope of like, he touched me and I shivered. That gets on my nerves so much when romance authors do that, and so that was kind of bothering me a teensy tiny bit. And then also in the second book, the ending was really good, but the way that the love story ended, I was kind of like, but I did like it overall. I do like Charlie Holmberg's writing. The other books that I've read by her I did enjoy, so I want to keep reading more just in case this was like one book that I didn't like of her books, you know, but I did like it. So then I read the Zero G series by Dan Wells. The first one's Zero G, the second one is Dragon Planet, and the third one is Stargazer. Now I rated the first one 4.5 stars, the second one 4.25 stars, and the last one 4.5 stars. So I liked this series as a whole. Dan Wells just has this way of writing something that makes me so intrigued and so interested, and it just like grabs my brain and hooks me, and I find it so interesting and intriguing. I liked the first book quite a lot. This is a series that's just an Audible exclusive, so I don't think there is even a physical copy you can buy. I would buy a physical copy though because I did enjoy it, but I think the Audible narration is very interesting to listen to. It's meant for, I think, like elementary to middle grade, so it is younger, like it's meant for younger readers, and it follows this kid who is going with his family into space to colonize another planet, along with like, I think it was like 10,000 other people in their families are going to colonize this other planet that they found, and it follows this kid as he's trying to make sure that his spaceship that he's in and all these people get safely to the other planet. And it was really cute, and I liked the amount of drama that there was, with it still feeling tame but also feeling like a little kid would think this is really gripping, because I thought it was really gripping, especially the first one. The second one was less so. I was more just like, meh. And the third one I was like, oh, this is interesting, I like this quite a lot. Even as an adult, I think you would appreciate them. It just kind of depends on whether you like his writing. This one isn't quite as much weird, because his books I find are just weird enough that I really like them, but they're so weird that some people don't like them, and they're kind of gruesome and gory sometimes, which it's just at the level where it's not too much for me, but anymore I would be like grossed out. The reason I really love his books though is the philosophical element that he always adds in, the moral question. And in this one the question was, is it moral to send a bunch of people and they're gonna be asleep for 100 years and wake up at another planet and live there for the rest of their lives and never go back to Earth? Like, that was kind of the question, and it's never answered, and I kind of like that about his books. We'll get into another author that I think didn't do that quite as well, but anyway, I really like the series. I do recommend it. Next I read Fire and Ice and Forest of Secrets by Aaron Hunter, and this is the second and third books in the original Warrior Cats series. I rated the second one 4 stars and the third one 3.5 stars. I reread the first one in I think December just for funsies, because I was like, why ever not? I'm bored. And so I read them, and they are just like a reality TV show for cats. It's just that, with wars sometimes. And I was reading these and I was like, what in the world is gonna happen to these stupid cats? I couldn't put them down. Like, it got to the point where I was like, I could stop rereading this, like it's fine. I have read these all. I've read so many of these books. I read them when I was younger, so I was doing a reread, and I'd forgotten like 90% of everything that happened, and the things that I remembered were like the most interesting parts, and parts of the book that I was reading I was like, I'm so sure this was not in here the first time, because this is like so convoluted. But as a kid, like, you don't care about that. You're just like, oh, interesting cats. So they still got me. Like, I read the entire first series over again, and I was so tempted to read the other ones, but I was like, I do not need to spend 7 years of my life reading this again. again, so let's just not. But I get why people love these books and still read them to this day. I think if I had stayed up to date with all of them, I might still be reading them, but I gave up at some point, and honestly, that's fine. So anyway, I reread the second and the third one in this month, and then I'll talk about the later ones when we get there. The last book that I read in January, where is it? Oh, I don't own it. Oh, that makes sense. Is My Dearest Love by Sarah M. Eden, and this is like the prequel to the Longing for Home series, and I loved this book. When I read it the first time, I didn't care as much about the characters, and so when I read it, I was just like, whatever, it doesn't matter. And now when I was rereading it, I was crying. I was bawling tears, because this series is her series where she's just like, I know how to make you love these characters, and then I'm just gonna, you know, stick a knife and twist it, and you're still gonna read these books and love them. And yep, that's what happened. So this book is just them being happy, and it made me cry because I knew what was coming, and it was so sad. I'm even kind of crying thinking about it. But anyway, love that book. I rated it 4.75 stars. It can't be any higher because it is like a really short novella, but I still really loved it. All right, now we are in February. Now, I hate this one. It looks fine on camera, but in person, ugh. My problem is that this entire year I was doing all of my drawing with markers, and I'm decent with colored pencils, but I have no concept of moderation when it comes to a marker, and so it just always looks bad. But we'll get better. All right, in February, I read 12 books for a total of 24 books so far in the year. Now, the first book that I read in February was Longing for Home, and I rated it 5 stars again. And then I read the second book, and I rated it 5 stars again. I love these books so much, specifically Katie's duology. So good. This is so good. Write more love triangles. Please, write more love triangles. My favorite, Sarah M. Eden. I love your book so much. Anyway, do I want to give you a synopsis of the first book? I don't. I want you to go into this blind. Read these books though. They're so good. They're clean romances, and you can read them as a teenager or as an adult and enjoy them both the same way. They're so good. I did a reread, and I was like praying that I would still love them, and I did. I have a whole video of me rereading the series, by the way. So if you want my more in-depth reviews, they're on whatever that video is called. All right, and then after that, I reread the rest of the entire series. So then I went and I reread the rest of the series. So I reread the third book, Love Remains, and rated it 4.75 stars. Then I reread Long Journey Home and rated it 4.75 stars again. Valley of Dreams, 4.75 stars. And then Choices of the Heart, 4.5 stars. That one, when I read it the first time, I rated it 5 stars, and that was because I saw my favorite people in the entire world again. And when I reread it, I was like, actually, this isn't as sad as I thought it was, but it was still wonderful, so I rated it still 4.5 stars. And then I was rereading all of these, so when the latest book came out in the series, Home to Me, I got to read it, and it was lovely, and I rated it 5 stars, and I was crying my eyes out because I love this book so much. If you want my full review and ratings, I have a whole video on that. But anyway, I love those books. Then I reread another one of my favorite books, which I already mentioned in this video, which is Lonely Hearts Day by Casey West. And I rated it again 5 stars because it is still one of my favorite books she has ever written, even though it's only like 114 pages long. It's so good. Please read that book. It's my favorite Valentine's Day book I think I've ever read. I love it so much. Then we got back to our Warrior Cats rereads, which is Rising Storm by Erin Hunter, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. The writing just, like, it goes downhill, but I can't put them down. I was reading them before bed. I think this entire year I have just had a book that I've been reading right before I go to sleep every night, and I'll read like 17 pages or something like that, and then I'll conk out, and I'm mostly reading them on my Kindle. These were my Kindle reads for a while, so I'd read like 1-ish a month, maybe 2 if I got invested. It just took me so long to read this book, and I said maybe taking longer to read this one increased the appeal, just because there was less stupid decisions of cats I was reading in one go. The next book that I read was Extreme Makeover by Dan Wells, and I rated this one 4 stars. This one has swearing in it. Just to let you know, I think this is the first one all year that I had to give you that trigger warning. Not trigger warning, content warning. So this one has swearing, weird gender stuff, and sexual innuendos. And I'd say this one is very much an adult book. Of all the Dan Wells books I've read so far, this one is an adult book. It's so interesting, don't get me wrong. I so enjoyed it, but it's very much a book about a really interesting idea. I told you all Dan Wells books have this really interesting idea that kind of takes you and makes you so interested and intrigued. And if you don't enjoy that part of his books, you're not really gonna enjoy his books. So my boyfriend also listened to this book because I found it, I think, on Audible. He listened to it and he was like, oh, this was so stupid, I couldn't do it. And I read it and I loved it because I just like his interesting philosophical questions that he lets me think about. So anyway, 4 stars because it just had too much weird stuff in it for me, but I still think about the ending all the time. The next next book that I read was In the Twilight Kingdom by Jeff Wheeler, and this was a prequel to, oh, I don't even know, one of his series, whatever the third Muirwood series is. It's a prequel to something in that series, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. It was really cute. I liked it a lot, but it's not like a full-on book, so 4.5 stars. And then I read yet another Warrior Cats book, which is A Dangerous Path by Erin Hunter, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. And my note on this is, Fireheart is such an idiot, but it is an entertaining read. Now we are to March. I also really like what my journal looked like in March. I think I did a good job. So in March, I read 17 books, and that was because that was the month that I wasn't at work anymore. So the first book that I read was We Met Like This by Casey West. This one is her, I think, adult novel debut, and these ones include swearing, sex, alcohol, innuendos, all that stuff. Not my jam. I read it because I wanted to have an actual opinion on her adult books, so I didn't just say, don't read those books if you don't want this sort of thing in them. I wanted to actually give you an actual, like, this is exactly what's in this book so you know. And I ended up rating it 3.5 stars because in the end I do like her writing, but I don't think it's improved by the fact that there is swearing and sex in it. It doesn't make it any better. Her young adult books are better because they are forced within some constraints of, propriety is the wrong word, but like some sort of guidelines that she has to follow, and it works better, and it works better because it's that sort of artistic, what am I trying to say? Her books are better when she has some sort of constraint she has to write within because she's more creative that way. And so these books, just like, it was an interesting story, but the fact that there was sex in the book and physical attraction didn't make me like the book anymore. It in fact made me like the book less. And I have read books that have that sort of thing in it that I've rated higher than this, that I have enjoyed, and I think that it doesn't improve the book, but I can see why they included it. But in this one, I just didn't feel like there was a point to it being there. And that's just my opinion. I've seen raving reviews of that book, so I don't know, could just be me. Then I read the last book in the Warrior Cats series, which is The Darkest Hour by Erin Hunter, and I rated this one 3.25 stars, and I said so unfulfilling of an ending, because it is, and I could go on a rant about that, but you know, I don't need to. It's fine. What is this book? Here's the first book that I actually don't remember reading. Let me pull out my tablet real quick. Oh, okay, I remember. So then in like the next 2 months, I read this series that was on Kindle Unlimited that was coming out at the time, and it had a bunch of authors that I think I'd read books from before. And so I was like, sure, why not? I'll read this interconnected Regency romance series. Kind of like the plot that went through all of the books is that there was this friend group of guys, and they were on a boat, and the boat was gonna sink maybe in the ocean, and so they were all like trying to find something to do to get their minds off the fact that they're maybe gonna die. One of the guys, the first guy in the group, is like, hey, I bet when we get back to shore, I'm gonna get married before all of you. And everyone else is like, nah. And he's like, if I get married before all of you, then I win the bet. And also, whoever gets married last in this group owes everyone £100 or something like that. Some ridiculous sum of money that I don't know how much it relates to, because I am not English, nor do I live in that time period. So then everyone in this friend group, I think there was 6 people, because there's 5 books in the series. There was 7. There was 7 friends in the friend group because there's 6 books in the series. Each one of the authors, so the 6 authors, chose a person and wrote their book. So there's technically an order to these books, but I think I read them completely out of order. I think I read the first one like literally last or second to last or something like that. The order is just who gets married first, but the way that these books are set up is you can pick them up from any book in the series and understand what's going on. So each book gives you kind of that beginning scene from that character's perspective, and then goes on to whenever they get married. The reason why there's only 6 books in the series and not 7 is because the first guy in the friend group, he like doesn't get a book. Like, he gets married first, but he doesn't get a book. And so I was so confused about this because I read them completely out of order. So I read them, I'll just tell you the order and I'll talk about them all right now. I think I read some in another month, but I'll just talk about them all right now because I'm talking about the series. So I read A Bewildered Bachelor, then An Accidental Marriage, then A Foolish Proposal, then A Novel Engagement, then A Fortunate Miscalculation, and then An Honorable Love. And An Honorable Love, I think, is the last one in the series. So I read them completely out of order because the very first one in the series is A Fortunate Miscalculation. And that one kind of gives like the backstory on the first guy who got married, and apparently he wasn't a very nice guy. He didn't really stay in contact with the friend group. The friend group itself kind of fell apart after that point. There was like a pair of brothers and their friend that kind of kept talking to each other, but everyone else kind of didn't really talk to each other anymore. They'd like say hi at balls or whatever, but they weren't really friends after this. And so when that guy gets married and sends out the, hey, I I got married first, you guys all have to get married now. Everyone else in the friend group is kind of like, oh, I guess we did. I did say I'd do that, so I guess sure, fine, whatever. I read them out of order. So I was confused because that bit of context about the fact that he wasn't a very nice person, the first guy, and the fact that the friend group wasn't really a tight friend group, I was so confused because in every other book up until that point, you're like, wait, but this friend group doesn't really seem like your friends. Like, you know nothing about this person. You don't know who they got married to. It was so confusing to me. And then the fact that each book is written by a different person, the tone and the writing style changes in every book, and so it was so confusing. So anyway, the first couple books that I read, I really did like them. So I rated A Bewildered Bachelor 4 stars. That one's by Holly Jo Monroe. And then I read An Accidental Marriage next by Deborah M. Hathaway, and I rated that one 4 stars. And then I read A Foolish Proposal by Casey Stockton, rated that 3.5 stars. And I don't remember anything about the plots of that book, but I do remember the plot of this one. A Novel Engagement by Aneka R. Walker, and I rated this one 2.25 stars because it was so stupid. There's limits to Regency romance for me. Like, I have my favorite authors and I will read everything they write, and anything they write is gold. But there's other authors that, like, even if their plot is interesting, I can't read them because the way that they write drives me crazy. So I think Aneka R. Walker is one of those people because, oh, it was so stupid. It was like this forced childhood engagement, best friends to enemies to lovers to she gets engaged to someone else while she's engaged to this guy, and then she writes books and he's a book reviewer. He said a bad review about her book once, and so she hates him forever, and he doesn't know that this happened, and every single thing that these people talk or say has a stupid pun about books in it, and I was going crazy to the point that I was just like gasping because it was driving me insane. I think I even like took some highlights. Oh, I do have highlights. Okay, let's read them. You're not gonna understand how annoying these phrases were to me, but I'm just gonna read some of the things that I highlighted because they were so out of left field the way they were written, because they were supposed to be poetical and the rest of the book isn't. This one just made me laugh because it was a strong waft of yeast and treacle greeted me the moment I pulled open the door, and in my brain when I think of yeast, I think of foot smell. So I just think of the smell of feet and sweetness hits you, and I just started gagging laughing because it was so funny to me, even though I know that that's just supposed to mean like you open the bakery door and it smells good, but that's like that's not the way that the sentence sounds. And then the next one is, I set my hand on the cool glass and turned my head so that others might not see my remorse. I wasn't into fashion as some men, but I admired how the pink brought out the color in her cheeks and the style flattered her figure. Like a cold, I had developed one symptom and then another, and before I knew it, I had succumbed to loving her. One smile would be enough to strengthen me for the task ahead, though I would not complain if her warm blue eyes beckoned me nearer or her willowy fingers reached for mine. I wasn't angry that he wasn't kissing me, but my patience was wavering like a boat about to capsize under pressure. Her sweet fragrance soothed and invigorated my soul. I removed his hand from the necklace and set it on my stomach. And we love you, Rowan Ashworth. And the fact is, you're not gonna understand how stupid those quotes are without reading the book, but just trust me. The last one though, I knew it, just like the way the book was written. I knew that they were gonna do the whole, and she was pregnant at the end of the book because they're married, and then they did it, and I was like, ah. Anyway, that was so funny to me. What was I talking about? Oh, okay. So I read A Novel Engagement. Then I read A Fortunate Miscalculation by Karen Thornell, and I rated that one 4 stars. That one was fine. That was the first book in the series. It was fine. And then An Honorable Love by Audra Wells was the very last one that came out. And I think I read it like a couple days after it came out because they were coming out like 2 weeks apart from each other, I think. And I just managed to start reading them in the middle. So then I rated the last one 3.25 stars because at that point I was just like, whatever, I don't care. And the last one, like, it didn't really strike my fancy as a book. Like, I wasn't engaged with the plot. What even was the plot? Oh yeah, that one just like, it was weird the way that it was set up. All of them are like, and then there was a secret that they had to uncover, and in that one it was just like double top of that, and I was like, oh, whatever, it's too much. Anyway, that's my opinion of that whole series. I did read these throughout a couple months, but I'll just skip over them if we get to that part. Okay, so the next book that I read was Ice by Sarah Beth Durst, and I have been wanting to read this for a while. I had this one written down, I think, in a notebook when I was a teenager, and it was a book that I'd wanted to read or I'd heard heard was a fairy tale romance, and so I was like, yeah, let's read this book. And I rated this one 0.5 stars. You heard me right, 0.5 stars. I couldn't. I hated this book. It made me go insane because first it ruins the fairy tale because it's based on sun and moon, ice and snow, and it turns it into this like, and I can do anything I want because I'm a girl, and I can do my things I want to do because feminism, and it was stupid, and it drove me crazy, and I was going crazy on top of the fact of the plot, and then just in the middle, it just has swearing, just for no reason, and then it also has this bear, he does nothing wrong, and she just gets mad at him, and then she loves him, and she's mad at him, then she loves him. I was like, what is going on? And then there's rather like some really disgustingly gruesome scenes, like out of nowhere, and then on top of that, it was boring, so yeah, I didn't like that. But then I reread Illusionarium by Heather Dixon Walwork, and I rated this one 4.25 stars on the reread. I really like this story. It has a really interesting premise and idea. I think it's my least favorite of all the books she's written because she's written 3 books and I've read all of them at this point. And my favorite one is Entwined, and that one's just, oh, it's perfect. I love it so much. And I like this one a lot, but I think it's a little bit too creepy for me. Like there's some body horror elements to it, and that's just, I'm not a body horror person. I can't do that. So that's why it's lower, but I did really like the writing in this one. Then I read Falling for You by Becky Wade, and this one's actually the second book in a series, and I just was like, surely I'm not gonna like this book. It doesn't matter. I'm not gonna find the first book in the series. I wish I'd read them in order. I loved this. I rated it 4.5 stars. I haven't rated any of her books technically 5 stars yet, but I'm betting there's one out there because I really liked her books. But then I read the rest of the series, which is True to You, which is the first one, and then Sweet on You, which is the last one. So I rated the first one 4.25 stars. I probably would have rated it higher if I'd actually read it first. And then I rated the last one 4.75 stars, and I really liked it. Now, these books are adult Christian romances, and they don't have any sex in them, and they don't have any swearing in them. But they do have mentions of rape, sex, murder, affairs, hard things, kidnapping. Like, they have a lot of stuff going on in the plots, but not in a way that it feels overdone or overblown, or they're including things just for clickbait or just to get you to read the book. They're included in a thoughtful manner, and I like her writing style. Even it is a little flowery sometimes, and it does sometimes have a little bit of that, and then he touched me and I was like, oh, but it's not in a way that drives me insane. The only time she includes it is if physical touch is like a really important thing for that couple. I really like her writing. Like, I don't think it's perfect, but I really liked her writing, and I think I've read about half of her books because she hasn't written that many, and I really hope she writes more because I really like her books, and I was surprised about this fact. Oh wait, I forgot. I own that one, Falling for You by Becky Wade. Yeah, I found it at a thrift store. That's why I had the second book, and that's why I didn't try to find the first book, was because I just had the second book. I really like this one. I want to reread them at some point. Then I read How to Ditch Your Fairy by Justine Larbalestier. I don't know. That's a really long name. I didn't like this book. I thought maybe I'd like it because I like fairy tale stuff and twists on fairy tales. I even will still read like, not children's fairy tales, but I'll read like middle grade fairy tale things just because I like them. It makes me happy. I rated this one 3 stars because the idea was interesting. It truly was. The whole point of this book is the main character is trying to get rid of her fairy because in this world it's either luck, magic, fairies, or just some weird statistical improbability that this world has, that everyone has, or not most everyone, some people sometimes have this thing they call a fairy or luck or fortune, where just something happens to them, something good happens to them. There are ways to get rid of your fairy, which is what she's trying to do in this book, but it's not widely known. And so her fairy is the parking fairy. Whenever she's in the car, anyone who's in the car will find the best parking spot of their life. Every single time she's in the car, this happens. And she's sick of this because she'll have to be in the car forever. Like, her mom will take her in the car, everyone will take her in the car. There's this kid that always kidnaps her basically and makes her get in the car with her, and she's sick of it. She doesn't want to do it anymore. And so there's the other girl that's a popular girl, and all the boys love her, and she also wants to get rid of her fairy, and so they both kind of team up to try to get rid of their fairies. And it's dumb. Like, the ending of it isn't satisfying because she didn't really like do anything. She didn't learn a lesson. It's just kind of like a series of events that happens. But anyway, that's that book. Mercury Reign 20 and 1 by Sarah M. Eden. This is the 3rd book in a really short series. I think I ended up rating this one 4.25 stars, and I'm excited for the rest of the series. Spoiler alert, I've read another book in the series, but we'll talk about it when we get there. Then I read A Lady's Promise by Renee S. Clark, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. And this one was just fine. Like, the plot I didn't love. It wasn't terrible. I did believe in the end that they were in love, kind of, but it was also really short. It was was like 172 pages. And so you get to a point in the book where you're like, surely nothing else happens. And then something else happens and you're like, why? Sometimes I really, really, really like Regency romances, but sometimes the cover is the best part of the book. Remember how I said I read a ton of Becky Wade books? So there's another book in that series I was telling you about called Then Came You, and this is the prequel, kind of what happens to the dad in the series. And this one's really cute. I liked it a lot. It's kind of set up as an epistolary novel, so it's like found fragments of papers and emails and phone calls that were sent. And I liked the way it was set up. It was cute. I did end up rating it 3.75 stars because I wasn't like obsessed, but I did like it a lot. And it has mentions of sex and death. All of her books kind of have like mentions of things, but there's nothing like bad in them really. They just have some more adult topics, I guess. That's the word, adult. All right, and then the last 2 books I'd read that month were part of the series I was telling you about earlier. So now we're gonna go on to April. I also liked what I did for April. It's just raindrops. See, I just go too heavy on the marker. In April, the first book that I read was I Am Spock by Leonard Nimoy. Or is it Nimoy? Something like that. I said it wrong the entire time I was reading the book aloud because I read this book aloud to my boyfriend, and I think I was reading it aloud during also March, but we finished it in April, obviously. I really liked this book. It was fascinating. There's another book called Leonard, and it's by Bill Shatner, who was, so if you don't know, he is Spock in the TV show Star Trek, and his co-star, who was Captain Kirk, his name was Bill Shatner, and they were best friends for like a really long time. And after he passed away, Leonard Nimoy, his friend wrote a book about him, and I've been wanting to read that book, but I got to a point for some reason that I was just sick of listening to audiobooks, and so I just wasn't listening to them. So I might read it now because the only way I could find it was on audiobook, and it's narrated by Bill Shatner, which is really interesting, and I am excited to listen to the audiobook. We might be able to read that now, but I really like this book. I ended up rating it 4 stars, and I'm only rating it purely because I like reading books. I think it's wrong to rate someone's personal experience, so I'm not rating that. I'm just rating the fact that it is swearing and it has a weird story about sex. So it's more just a rating for myself, so remember. But I did really enjoy reading this, and my boyfriend also really liked it. Now, the next series by Becky Wade that I read, I don't know what it's called, The Porter Family. I thought so. The first one's Undeniably Yours, the second one is Meant to Be Mine, the third one is A Love Like Ours, and the fourth one is Her One and Only. And I rated the first one 4.75 stars. I think I rated all of them 4.75 stars, except the last one, which I rated 4.5 stars. And I liked this series quite a lot. The only reason I rated the last one lower is because all the other ones about brothers, and then the last one was about a sister, and she was like, oh, I'm a macho girl, I can do anything I want. And I hate books where the main character is like, I can do whatever I want because I'm a girl. And like, it gets on my nerves. I can't handle that. But I did still like her book quite a lot. I don't think there is any trigger warning for this series, really. There's like PTSD in one of them. Sometimes the characters drink, but they're adults, so like it's fine. Anyway, I really liked that series. It was very good. It's probably like not a 5-star series, but it is a 4.75 star series. I think the first one that I read was a 5-star series in my brain, even though none of them I rated 5 stars. Then I read, well, I was like reading this one for like 3 weeks, but I finished reading Wonder Tales. And this is just a compilation of older classic fairy tales, because one of the first ways that people were telling fairy tales was as a story to someone else. So these were written down collections of oral fairy tales to the best of how they could collect them at the time. And they were all written down in this anthology, I guess, by Marina Warner, and it was translated by a bunch of different people from French or whatever language they were in to English. I liked this one. I think I ended up rating it 4.5 stars just because it is really hard to read an old fairy tale. Like the ones for now, they are written for us to understand, and these back then were written in a way that people listening to them would understand. And because I am not a medieval person in France, it like doesn't hit for me as much as it would hit for them. So it was really interesting, and I liked learning about the backstory to fairy tales. I was obsessed with it, given by the fact it took me 3 weeks to read it, but it was really interesting. I did like the artwork in this one better than in some other adult anthology books that I've read before, and I like how small it is. It's very cute. It does have some weird gay stuff in it, which I was really surprised. Like, not a lot of stories have that. And then it also has some, I think maybe some blood. It just has like weird stuff in it. Like, I definitely say this is adult. Like, don't give this to a child because it's weird. Then I read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And honestly, I'm glad I never read this in high school. I wanted to. I think there was a copy that looked pretty much exactly like this on the desk in one of my classes at one point, because like a class before us were reading it and they were leaving it on the desk, and I wanted to read it. I thought it was really interesting, just like the premise of it. And now that I have read it, it does not hold up to what I thought it was in my brain, like at all. I had this whole other story that I think if I could read that story, that'd be so interesting. And now that I've read it, it is just so much less cool. And honestly, it felt like Magnolia Parks. It was really interesting to read and kind of see the parallels and the ideas that are pulled. This book is also set up in a really interesting way where it has the narrator is not the main character. Like, he technically is, but like he's not. He kind of sees the events of the story happening and it's from his perspective. So there's still some stuff that we don't really know what happens because he doesn't really know what happens. And it's an interesting way to set up a book, but it still was not my favorite. It's really short though. It's less than 200 pages long. And I don't think I'm ever going to reread this, but it's going to go on my classic shelf of classics that I have read. It does have swearing in it, infidelity, drunkenness, death, and I rated it 3.75 stars because the writing is beautiful. It's so poetical and magical to read this book and to hear the way that the words are phrased. And I think if it was any longer, the writing would get annoying, but as it is, the writing kind of leaves you wanting more, which is good. You want that in a book. I don't know if I'd ever read anything else written by this guy, but this one was interesting to read. The next book I read was Small Steps by Louis Sachar, and this was a book I was reading to my boyfriend. There was a time where I read I think it was just a couple books I read out loud to him, but this is one of them. I rated it 3.75 stars. He might have rated it less. The reason why I didn't like this book as much, this is a sequel to Holes, by the way. Holes is the really popular book. It's like his book that everyone knows besides like the Wayside Stories, and I wish that it was more magical like Holes was, because one of the charms of Holes is the fact that it has magic in it, and this book doesn't. It's just like gritty, down to earth, real life, figuring things out with punching. Like, it just was not the same thing as Holes, and I was going in wanting more Holes, and instead I got Holes adjacent something else, and I didn't really like that. It does have some swearing in it too, and some violence. Then I read Tailored Realities by Brandon Sanderson. This was a compilation of short stories that are non-Cosmere related across the time that he started writing books. So the Cosmeres is like Mistborn and The Way of Kings, all this stuff is at, and his non-Cosmere stuff is books that has nothing to do with that world. This is just something else he wrote for fun. And it's just a compilation of all these short stories, which was really nice to read because there were some that I hadn't managed to read yet. And I think now I have read pretty much every single book he has ever written now, because I read this book, which had all those other books in it. This had some swearing in it, some violence, nudity, exclamation point, and death. It was probably one of his most edgy books I've read to this date, which is so funny because it's a short story compilation. But I did like it. I liked some of it quite a lot and some of it not a lot, so I rated it 3.75 stars. Now we get to another book that I was thinking about earlier, where I was talking about Dan Wells, where Dan Wells has this really interesting way of including ideas and philosophical questions within his books, but in a way that when it doesn't get answered, you're not frustrated, you're just more intrigued, at least to me, because I like his books. So Dan Wells' brother, Robinson Wells, also writes books, which is so cool. And I was like, oh, awesome. One of my favorite authors, his brother writes books. Let's read some of his brother's books. So I picked up the series Blackout, and it has Blackout's the first one and Dead Zone is the second one. And I rated the first one 3.5 stars and the second one 2.75 stars because it is just a war book. And you know what I feel about war books. I don't like them. I don't like death. I don't like violence. It's fine if the plot is interesting enough and it's not the whole thing, but if it's just a war, that is not my vibe. I don't like that. And so if it was just a war book, I would have been annoyed, but I would have been like, okay, whatever, I guess I just don't like his books. But he also includes this really interesting philosophical question, which he then not only doesn't answer and leaves it up and open, but the fact that it is one of the main points of the book and it's brought up several times and then never gets resolved, never gets thought of, but then also the characters at the end are doing something completely opposite to what you think the moral of the story is. It's bizarre and weird, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the way the book ended. Maybe there was something in there that I didn't understand because I was tapping out because it was a war book, but like, I didn't like that one at all, and I was kind of shocked that I didn't like it because I liked quite a lot of it. It was interesting, but it wasn't my vibe. It also has swearing, death, violence, gore. It's a war movie. Not a war movie, a war book, so it's got all that in it. Then I read The Invisible College by Jeff Wheeler, and this was one of the books, the whole series actually. I was reading them slowly before going to bed at night, and so I ended up rating it 4 stars because it wasn't like interesting, invested enough in the early couple books to make me like binge read them, which is how I normally read his books because I really like his books. And so I rated it 4 stars, but I did like it. I liked the world setup. It was very interesting. Then Then I read The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and I ended up rating this one 4.75 stars. And this book is like the embodiment of spring. I read it at the perfect time. It was beautiful. I've read, I think, a couple other books by her at this point, and this isn't my favorite one. I think A Little Princess is still my favorite because that's the one that I read when I was very young, and I did really like this one. My only problem, the only reason I didn't rate it 5 stars, is the fact that in this book there are little kids doing so very little kid things, and for some reason that so cringed me out, and I felt terrible because I'm an adult. I'm like, what business do I have to say that little kids can't be doing little things in a book? But it's still, I was like, at one point. Thinking about it now, it cringes me less. Maybe I'd reread it and give it 5 stars, but that's how I was feeling at the moment. Then I read Zell by Donna Jo Napoli, and I ended up rating, did I really rate this 3.75 stars? I should have rated this like 1 star because that's how I still think of it, but whatever. I hated this book. It was so bad. It had sex in it, which was so annoying because it was a Rapunzel retelling. And if you know anything about like the classic Rapunzel story, it follows a girl who's stuck in the tower, and then the prince comes up, and then she gets pregnant, and then the mother kicks her out because she got pregnant and her dress is getting too tight, and then he gets kicked out of the tower and his eyes get torn out by thorns, and then she finds him eventually and she has her twins, and then she cries on the guy's face, and then his eyes come back, and then they live happily ever after because he's a prince. So that's how the original fairy tale goes. This started out as a really interesting twist where it's Rapunzel and she lives in the Alps. Think of like Heidi, if you've ever read Heidi. It has them living in this little cottage with sheep in the mountains, and they're going down into the village to go get the things they need for the rest of the year and then come back up again. And it's so interesting the way that it's set up. I love the idea of Rapunzel being this girl not stuck in a tower, but stuck in this like kind of in a mountain, and she's stuck up there with her mother. And I thought that was so interesting. And then halfway through the book it just changes, and then it's just her stuck in a tower, and I was like why? It was so interesting before. And then the mother, she's a witch, and then it has this really weird plot with the mother wanting to get pregnant, and she was married to this guy, and then he started hating her because she couldn't have a child, and so she leaves him, and then she makes a deal with the devil so she can have a child, and so she steals Rapunzel because of the whole, her mother likes the herb, and then she takes the baby for the Rapunzel herb, you know? The mother really does love this child, but she loves her in a way that's like obsessive over her, and so she locks her in a tower, so she realizes that her mother is the only one she ever wants really, and she doesn't want anyone else in her life. And so Rapunzel goes crazy because she's stuck in this tower for 3 years, and she's literally going insane. And so when the prince finds her, she is insane. She is crazy. And so the sex, I don't think is consensual because she is insane, and it literally in his brain is like, I don't think she's really sane right now. And he's still, I was so mad. I was so mad because this is also a children's book, and then the end of the book is just the end of the fairy tale basically, and I was like, anyway, I was on track to rate it really highly until that happened, and then it just like for me, I should have rated it 1 star. It's a 1 star in my brain. That was April, and now we are on to May. Now in May, I ended up reading quite a lot of books. I don't know how, but I did. Read 24 books this month, and I think it was because I read a lot of short stories that were like before or after a series, and so that kind of added at least 5 extra books to it. So the first book that I read was The Secret Language of Girls by Frances O'Rourke Dowell, and then I ended up reading the rest of the series. And the second one is The Sound of Your Voice, Only Really Far Away, and the third book is The Kind of Friends We Used to Be. And I really enjoyed this series. It was bizarrely close to the way that little girls in middle grade actually think. And I'm saying that because when you're that young, as you start to grow up and find out who you are in your brain, you make friends based more on what you like and less on friends you had when you were younger. And so it follows 2 girls who are best friends, and then they start to drift apart at the beginning of, I think, 6th grade. And so the story kind of follows them and their lives over 2 years. And I really liked how in the end, it doesn't really end it with like a bow, a cliche ending, a happy, this is how it all ends. It kind of leaves it open-ended, and I liked that a lot. It was a really interesting series. I probably would reread it. Anyway, I rated the first one 4 stars, the second one 3.75 stars, and the last one 4 stars. The next book I read was Wendy's Ever After by Julie Wright, and I ended up rating this one 4.25 stars. And the only reason I didn't rate it higher was because it just felt kind of insta-lovey, and I was like, eh. But I do really like her writing. I thought it was really beautiful. I think this is her her fantasy debut book, which I read a couple years after it came out because my library is so slow to the uptake on these authors' books. I think Julie Wright, they don't have a lot of her books at my library, which is annoying because I love her books. That one is like, it is Wendy, so it's Peter Pan, and it's Wendy when she's older and no, not Wendy. It's Wendy's like great-great-granddaughter or something like that, and she gets to go to Neverland and solve this mystery. It was cute. I like the setup of the book a lot. There was only a couple like pacing issues. I was like, meh with it, but it was good overall. Then I read Your Inner Hedgehog by Alexander McCall Smith, and this was the 5th book in a series, and I read it just in the middle of the series. Just picked it up randomly at the library, and I knew that there was more books in the series beforehand, but I was kind of like, I don't really care to find the other books. If I like this book, I might go back and read the other ones, but I just decided to read in the middle. That's not like me, by the way. I never do that. The fact I've done that twice so far this year is insane. That is not me. I don't know who I am anymore. I ended up rating this 3.75 stars, but the interesting thing is I don't think my rating would have gone up if I had read the other books in the series. I think it would have maybe been the same or lower, because part of the fun was the fact that I did not know what was going on. They would allude to things that happened in a previous book, and I'd just be like, oh, how interesting, and just assume it was a mystery until I realized that no, it happened in a previous book. The main characters are so unlikable, and they do such annoying things, but the fun is seeing how they get thwarted or seeing how they succeed in the end, but they still have to go through things. It was interesting. I don't think I'd read more by him. The funny thing is, it was on my I got it from the library, so it was on my floor at one point, and my mom came in and she saw that I had the book there, and she's like, oh, McCall Smith, I read a couple of his books. I liked this one, I didn't like that one. It was fun. I started reading this one. I was like, oh my goodness, this is just a random book I picked up from the library, but okay. Then another book I'd been reading slowly all year long was Writing Magic by Gail Carson Levine, and I rated this 5 stars again. I read this when I was very young. It's like a how to get into writing for like an elementary school child, and I read this at the right time when I was younger, and I loved it. She has another book actually called Writer to Writer, and it's kind of the same thing but bigger and meant for slightly older kids, and I read them both around the same time when I was younger, and they made me want to write books. And so this year I've been trying really hard to do writing because I should do the things I want to do with my life, you know? And so I started reading it again and making myself do the prompts at the end of each chapter because it gives you like a writing prompt to do, and from doing that I found a story idea, so that's pretty cool. I might reread this every couple years or so just because it has really good writing advice. She's a fantastic teacher, and I think this is based on things that she would say in a writing class she actually gave people. I like this book quite a lot. Then I read Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Infernal Devices, I've read the cover, series by her, and I ended up rating this one 3.75 stars. And I like the ending of the series, but I still don't know if her writing is for me. I might just donate all the other books that I have of her because I just don't think I care very much, you know? And if you don't care, then what is the point? But anyway, I rated this one 3.75 stars. It has swearing, lots of kisses, less than like straight up sex, but just a lot of kissing, and it has a lot of violence in it. And I like this series, this book, a lot more than the first series, which the Mortal Instruments, y'all know why I don't like that first series. I cannot move or that will fall over. Then I read Stranger Things Have Happened by Casey West, and this is her second book that is adult, so it has swearing and sex. And I rated this one 4 stars, and then I was thinking about it later that night, and I was like, wait a second, the reason why I like this one more is because it's literally just a reskinned Maybe This Time, which is another book by her that's my favorite book by her other than Lonely Hearts Day. I liked it more than the other one, but at the same time it's just a worse version of the book that I really like, so I don't know. Then I read the second and third books in the Infernal Devices series, Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess, and I rated Clockwork Prince 4.25 stars and Clockwork Princess 4.5 stars. And I ended up liking the end of the series quite a lot. I still think that the whole love triangle thing is, I got to the point with her books where I have to look up what happens with the love triangle because otherwise I'm just so like, who do I root for? Like, I don't know. And after looking it up, I was like, I still don't know. But yeah, all of them have swearing, passionate kissing. The third one has a sex scene that's not explicit, but there is one, and there's lots of death and violence and gore and all that stuff. Then I read Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett, and I rated this one 4.75 stars, and I probably would have given it 5 stars if it didn't have swearing in it, because it was so cute. Rachel Catherine, my favorite YouTuber, also read this book, and I think she rated it lower than that, and she says she likes Emily Wilde more than this one, and I like this one more than Emily Wilde, which is really funny because I don't know why I like this one. I think it got to a point where it'd go into the magic part of it, and I'd be like, wait, no, go back to the cats. Like, I want to know about the cat shelter. Like, tell me more about the cats. And it would tell me magic, and then it would go back to the cats. I'm like, okay, good, go back to the cats. Like, by the end, I was rooting for the magic part, but I was just totally there for the dreary, mundane cat shelter part. I don't know why. I thought it was so interesting. Then I read Arabella by Georgette Heyer, and I rated this one 4.25 stars. It's not my favorite Georgette Heyer book I've read. I think I've rated one 5 stars, I think, at one point, but it was good. I liked it. It does have some mild swearing. I think the reason I didn't like that one as much was I didn't like the trope it was going into with the main character guy. He just kind of got on my nerves, and I never really rooted for him. I liked the girl, but I never really rooted for the guy. All right, then we started the rabbit hole that I fell into, which is the Wonder series. So I reread Wonder by R.J. Palacio, and I rated this one 5 stars. Again, I love this book so much. This one does have mild swearing and some violence in it. I'm not going to go into detail about my thoughts on these books because all of them are in the video that I made about these books. So if you want to know, go watch that one. It is 2 hours long. I'm aware of that, but believe me, there's 2 hours worth of content. There's no fluff in that. I edited that so hard. I was like, do I need to include this part? Nuh-uh. So everything in there is stuff that I thought was interesting enough to include, and I have so many thoughts. Anyway, but I still love this book, so 5 stars on this one. I also finished reading the second Jeff Wheeler book in the series I was reading earlier, so The Violence of Sound, and I rated this one 4 stars, and I liked each one progressively more, but I still rated the first 2 4 stars, but I did really like those ones. And then I read Augie and Me by R.J. Palacio, and I rated this one 5 stars. Again, Shingling is still my favorite one of them. I read White Bird, which is a graphic novel, and I rated that one at 3.5 stars, and that one has swearing, blood, and death in it. And then I read We're All Wonders by R.J. Palacio, and this one's literally a children's book, but I included it because this whole series was a huge part of my life this month, and so I included it as a book that I read. It's a kid's book, but I rated it at 3.75 stars because it's not my favorite children's book I've ever read. Like picture book is what I'm meaning. I finished reading the 3rd book in the oh my goodness, I can't remember what it's called. In the Invisible College series. And that one is The Alchemy of Fate, and I rated that one 4.75 stars. And at this point, a turn happens in the series, and I loved it since then. So my boyfriend, I think, got through 2 books, and I think if he'd read the 3rd one, he would have liked it more. But I read the 3rd one, and I was like, yeah, here we go. And then right after that, I binge read the last one, which is the 4th one, Master of the Royal Secret, and I rated that one 5 stars. I'm so excited for the next book that comes out later this year, which I'm not gonna talk about why because it's a spoiler, but I'm so excited. Then I read Mercury Rain, The Forever Flame by Sarah M. Eden, which is the 4th book in the short novella things that I showed you. And I don't own this one because it was at that point that I couldn't be bothered to order it from Amazon, so I didn't. But I rated that one 4.75 stars. I think that's the highest I've rated any of them in the series so far, and I love the way this is going. It's so well thought out. It's so cute. I love it. Then I read The Lost Abbey by Jeff Wheeler, and I've actually read this book as a graphic novel before because he has it in a graphic novel version and like a novel version. And so this time I read the novel version because I was like, well, I haven't read this one before, so I read it that way. And I don't know which way I like it better. I'm still confused as to why he didn't include this in the actual book, but maybe he just felt like the pacing would have been wrong if he included it in the actual book, but whatever. I rated it 3.75 stars because it's just like a prequel setup thing. And then I read 365 Days of Wonder by R.J. Palacio, and I ended up rating this 2.5 stars because I was just like in the middle of the road on this book, and I still am, honestly. Then I read The Banished of Muirwood and The Ciphers of Muirwood by Jeff Wheeler, which are the first 2 books in the next series down the line that I was in the reread. I can't remember. Oh, this is the Maya series. So this is the Covenant of Muirwood, I think. And I rated both these 5 stars again because I love these books. She's my favorite main character. I love her so much. Well, one of my favorite main characters. She's up there. I love her quite a lot. And now we're on to June. I like this one. It's still not great, but I'm getting better with markers. Now, in June, I only read 11 books. And you might be thinking 11 is quite a lot. I was doing nothing this month. I could have read so many more books. That's why I say I only read 11 books. and it's because I was working on that Wonder video. It took my whole life away. But anyway, the first book I read in June was The Void of Mirwood, the third book in the series. I was rereading and I rated that one 5 stars again. And then I read a prequel to, I think this was The Invisible College. It was a prequel to The Invisible College called The Brotherhood of Shadows, also by Jeff Wheeler, and I rated this one 4 stars. And then I read a prequel to the Mirwood series I had just read, or the next one, something like that. This one was The Hunter of Mirwood, and I rated this one 3.75 stars just because I was like, it's a prequel, you know. It was interesting to read, but it was just a prequel. Then I read The White Bird novelization by R.J. Palacio, and this one is the graphic novel turned into a novel by a different person, but it includes parts of R.J. Palacio's writing. And so I rated this one 2.25 stars because, oh my goodness, I hated it. And then I read White Bird again. This is the graphic novel, but I listened to it as an audiobook because they had a full cast audio version of it. And so I listened to it for the sake of completion. And so I rated that one 4.75 stars this time because as an audiobook, I liked it quite a lot more. And that one does have swearing. And honestly, it's creepier as an audiobook because you can hear the screams. All right. And then I had to take a break from Wonder. And so I read The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. And I rated this one 3.75 stars. I did binge read it in like one sitting because I needed something else in my life, but I didn't like it as much because it had so much swearing in it, and not just the swearing, it had a lot of sexual innuendos that I wasn't comfortable reading, honestly. It was a really interesting plot. I liked the setup. I liked the way she eventually broke kind of the curse thing, but I just couldn't I couldn't love it entirely, especially because the version of the guy that she ends up being with, I didn't feel like was the version that I liked the best. I liked A Day Before. You're not gonna understand what I'm talking about unless you read the book. And I don't want to tell you the gimmick of the book because it's really interesting to read it. I had no idea that was in there, so I won't tell you the gimmick, but I did like it, but I couldn't love it. Then I read The Magnificence by Amy McKechnie, I think is the way it is. And I rated this one 4.75 stars. This was so cute. As you might be able to tell, this is a kid's book. This is meant for probably like middle grade elementary school. And it is a book about a dog who thinks he is the nanny of a house, and his job is to keep these kids from doing things bad, and he's supposed to raise them up and teach them how to like brush their teeth and eat their food. And it's really cute, and the plot of the book is basically him just trying to prove his worth as a dog, and it's just so cute. I really like the way this was set up. It's also so cute, like the spine and everything, and then the book itself, the front of it has paw prints and then feet of like the kids, and then the spine's really cute. I really like this book. It was really cute. I might find something else that this author has written just because I liked it. Then I read The Other Bennett Sister by, I didn't write the author down in my notebook. Why in the world not? By Janice Hadlow. And I read this because I wanted to watch the TV show, which I still haven't watched, but I wanted to watch it and I wanted to read the book first because it's always more interesting to do it that way. I really loved the first half of this book. It was so interesting. It's from the perspective of Mary Bennett. So it's Pride and Prejudice, but from the perspective of Mary Bennett. And it has like the first part of it and then after Pride and Prejudice. And the first half of the book I thought was fascinating. I loved seeing these characters from her perspective. And then it gets to the second half of the book and it's just a typical romance novel. And it just was boring. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't like this. And then also because whenever you do this, you kind of have to change the characters. It turns the characters that I loved into characters that now I have to dislike for some reason. And I just don't like it. It didn't make me happy, but I did rate it 3.75 stars because I did really enjoy the first half. It was really interesting. Then I read The Prince and the Pauper by Mark Twain. I tried to read this, I think last year sometime, and I made it like literally 2 pages in and then I gave up because I was just like at the wrong time to try to read a classic. And this time I got through it and I liked it a lot. It was nothing like I thought it was going to be. All of the media that like takes this story, like the Barbie movies, for instance, like The Princess and the Pop Star or The Princess and the Pauper, it's not this story. Like they take the main idea of 2 people who look alike and switch places. But in this book, the point of it is so the king kind of learns how to be a good king by spending time among his subjects. And it's really interesting. I liked it a lot. But if I'd known that that was the point of the book, I would have thought about it so much differently than I did. But towards the end of the book, I realized what was happening and I did like it. I feel like there was a point to this book, like it was a political book when it was written, and it tried to explain why at the end of the book, but I couldn't understand. I can't understand politics on a good day, So I didn't understand probably the deeper meaning in it, but I did like it quite a lot. I did end up rating it 4.25 stars. Now, I read Samira Surfs by Roxana Gudraz, and I ended up rating this one 3.75 stars because I liked it, but I wasn't obsessed with it. It was a book written in verse from the perspective of a young immigrant girl from, oh, I can't remember where, but from one country where their society was being pushed out to another. And it was really interesting, and I liked the story, and I liked the way that the ending wasn't wrapped up in a bow. It didn't make me obsessed. That scared me so bad. I knew that was gonna happen. I'm so glad it didn't fall the other way. Okay, that shouldn't fall over now. That was so terrifying. What was I saying? Because I'm not a young girl anymore, the book wasn't like speaking to me on a soul level. I think if I'd read it when I was younger, I would have enjoyed it quite a lot more, but as it was, I did enjoy it. And then I read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and I rated that one 4.75 stars purely because it had swearing and some weird sexual stuff in it. I would have loved it if it didn't have any swearing in it at all, which is kind of what I thought it was when I went into it, because my siblings recommended it to me, and we don't like swearing in my house, so I thought maybe it was, I thought honestly that it was more clean than it was, and if I'd gone into it with the right expectations, I might have rated it even like 5 stars, but I did really like it quite a lot. I did cry at the ending. And technically another book that I read this year was my brother's book that he wrote, but since like you can't list on Goodreads, I'm not listing it, but I did also read that. So technically I read 91 books this year. Ha ha ha. So in the end, I read 90 books so far this year, and I'm excited to read more. My goal, I think this year, is 125 books, technically, as like my Goodreads goal, because I wanted to shoot really, really low, because I didn't want to stress myself out, because I think last year I read over 200 books, which was fun, but I don't want to stress myself out by trying to make myself read more than I read last year. I might end up reading more, but I don't want to make myself worried about it. So in conclusion, I read so many books. I'm excited to read more. I kind of went through a little reading slump at times, but I managed to read a lot of books that I like. I haven't gotten a lot of new 5-star books, but I think that's because I've been focusing on reading books for content or finishing a series and stuff like that, even if I don't like love it. And also this year I told myself that I have to rate books meaner, because I would just give books higher ratings just because I wanted to be kind. But if I really hate a book, I should just say that I hate the book, which I've done a couple times, but I need to do it more. Well, I will see you in my next video, which will be shorter, I promise. Oh, these are so heavy. All right, I will see you later. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.